What is up, guys? It is Coasters and Things here today. It's been a while, but I'm back. Seeing as I didn't ride enough new coasters this year to make a new top 25 favorite coasters list, I thought, what other kind of coaster list could I do? I ultimately decided on this. Today, I will be presenting to you all my top 10 least favorite roller coasters I've ridden. Now for this list, I am not counting kiddie coasters or rides such as Wild Mouses because by default, they are going to place lower on my list. This is for the major rides I have ridden. As for the rides that are duplicates of one another, they will all be lumped together as one since they are the exact same model. These are the absolute worst of the bad out of what I have experienced so far. This list will go from the least bad to the worst. Now, none of these are good rides at all in my opinion. So, let's get started. Starting off in the number 10 spot is Vortex at Carowinds. Now, do I hate this ride as much as most enthusiasts? No. Is it a good ride? Not really. I've only ridden two of these B&M stand-up coasters, this and Georgia Scorcher, and this was the worst of the two. The standing part isn't even that bad. It's just that this ride doesn't have as good of a layout as other coasters. It is not as enjoyable as sit-down coasters. Now, it was one of B&M's first ever coasters, so they did learn and improve upon this, which is good. I do hope everyone is able to experience a stand-up coaster before they're all gone, just so that they can understand what they're like. That being said, this is nowhere near the best stand-up coaster out there. Number 9 is Valravn at Cedar Point. This is my least favorite B&M I have ever ridden. I know some people actually like this ride, and I don't understand why. Part of the reason why is because these vest restraints are terrible. You basically are glued into your seat the whole time, and because of the G-forces, the restraints just keep coming down farther on your chest and thighs as you go through the ride. Plus, I found this ride to be rattly. I've noticed that with a lot of newer B&Ms. They have distinct rattles to them. This, in my opinion, is the definition of a crappy dive coaster. If you want to experience much better dive coasters, head to either of the Busch Gardens parks, because their dive machines are actually enjoyable. The number 8 spot is Blue Hawk at Six Flags Over Georgia. This is a Vekoma looper, and it is just unbearable. Those inversions are incredibly headache-inducing. Even with the vest restraints, I thought it sucked. It rarely has a wait longer than 5 minutes, and that is for a good reason. I never rode it when it was Ninja, however I have heard from some that did that it was even worse when it had standard over-the-shoulder restraints. It has a really bad layout in my opinion, really rough. I wouldn't be upset if Over Georgia decided to remove this in the near future. And spoiler alert, this isn't the only Vekoma coaster on this list. Number 7 belongs to Corkscrew at Cedar Point. Out of all the aero loopers I have ridden, this one is the only one I truly did not enjoy. First off, it is way too short. It really only has about 5 elements to it. Drop, airtime hill, vertical loop, turn, and double corkscrew. Plus, it's jerky. The other arrows weren't nearly as jerky as Corkscrew is. It is historic, and I do get that, and that's the reason why Cedar Point keeps it around, I feel. If it didn't have its historical value, they probably would have taken it out over 10 years ago. This coaster's almost 45 years old. It has not aged well. I'm sure in 1976 it was a good ride, but in 2020, it's just outdated and not worth riding more than once. Number 6 goes to Invertigo at Kings Island. Now, I had heard mixed opinions on this coaster going into it, and I thought, it's a boomerang, it can't be that bad. Boy, was I wrong. While it's not your traditional boomerang, I think this is actually way worse than a boomerang. It has the old Vekoma over-the-shoulder restraints. These things are huge and come all the way up to your ears. I rode this facing backwards so I could get a different experience from the standard boomerangs, and I come off this thing with a headache. It was really shaky and not enjoyable at all. So this ride can die, and I wouldn't care. At the halfway point, number 5 is a coaster at my home park. This is Mystery Mine at Dollywood. If you know me, you know how much I dislike this coaster. I talk trash about it all the time for a reason. From the first time I rode it to the most recent time, I have always hated it. It has huge, bulky, uncomfortable restraints that, depending on whether you're a guy or a girl, can hurt different parts of your body. The first beyond vertical drop in particular is painful. You definitely have to brace yourself there. There is one part to this ride that is actually decent, and that is the 2 inversions at the end. Every other part to this ride is just blech. This ride doesn't have good pacing. It has terrible capacity as well. Always has the longest line in the entire park. Even though I go to Dollywood several times a year, I rarely ride Mystery Mine. I generally don't ride it more than twice a year. The number 4 spot will go to Wildcat at Lake Compounce, the only wooden coaster on this list. This is by far the oldest coaster I have ridden, at almost 94 years old right now. Now, it didn't look like I was going to get on this at all when I went, but luckily it opened late in the afternoon for me. So I got 2 rides on it, once in the front and once in the back, and actually, both were terrible. Back wasn't any worse than the front. That should tell you something. It was extremely rough and painful. There's no airtime on this ride, and its pacing is sluggish. It was retracked almost entirely 3 years ago and given new GCI Millennium Flyer trains. I thought that would help. Maybe it did, but it was still so rough. If you want to ride a good wooden coaster, there's Boulder Dash in the same park. Down to the top 3 is Nighthawk at Carowinds. Oh man, is this an awful flying coaster. It was unbearably rough. The restraints are awkward and uncomfortable. The corkscrews at the end are by far the worst parts. It also doesn't feel like you're flying like you get on B&M flyers. It feels like you're lying on your back most of the time. Now, this was the first ever flying coaster, so I do understand that companies improved upon Nighthawk, but still, it's just not a good roller coaster. This coaster had so much potential as well when it got relocated to Carowinds. It's too bad it's just too rough to enjoy. Number 2 are actually a series of roller coasters. They are the SNS 4D Free Spins. I went in with an open mind the first time I rode one of these things in 2018, and I came off saying that they were the worst types of roller coasters ever. They give me headaches every single time. I just hate the flipping. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mind feeling out of control on a roller coaster sometimes. However, this is too much out of control to enjoy. They're not rough like most of the other coasters on this list are. I just do not like the flipping. I just simply don't like these coasters. Every time I have to ride one of these, I'm like, oh crap, here we go again. I really only say that about these and what's ahead of them. Finally, we're at the number 1 spot on my list. Can you guess what they are? Yep, Vekoma SLCs, aka T3 and Riddler's Revenge. These are the 2 I have ridden. You also have plenty of others like Mind Eraser, Flight Deck, Twisted Typhoon, and others. T3 in particular is undoubtedly the worst roller coaster I've ever ridden. And Riddler's Revenge is only better by a whisker because its restraints are better. These rides are the definition of pain. If you want to experience pain, then ride an SLC. I cannot believe that roller coasters can get this rough, but they can. So yes, Vekoma SLCs are without a doubt the worst rides I've ever experienced, and I don't think that'll be changing anytime soon. This is why the SLCs take the cake for my all-time least favorite roller coasters. What are your least favorite roller coasters? How much do you agree with me? Do you actually like some of these rides? Let me know all that down below. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And this is Coasters and Things signing out.